I thought I knew everything about my husband. 25 years of marriage, shared dreams, whispered secrets in the dark. But the day I walked into that lawyer's office for the reading of his will, I discovered that the man I loved, the man I buried just 2 weeks ago, had been living a double life. And when she walked through that door, with his eyes, his smile, his exact same dimple on the left cheek, my entire world shattered into 1,000 pieces. This is the story of how a single moment destroyed everything I believed in, and how the truth, no matter how painful, became my only path to freedom. My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm 47 years old, though lately, I feel ancient. My husband Richard died of a sudden heart attack on a Tuesday morning. One moment he was drinking his coffee, reading the financial news like he did every morning for 25 years, and the next moment, he was gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. No chance to ask him the questions that now haunt me every single night. The funeral was beautiful, if you can call such things beautiful. Hundreds of people came. Richard was well loved in our community. He was a successful financial advisor, always helping people, always smiling, always dependable. That's what everyone said. Dependable Richard. Honest Richard. Family man Richard. I stood there in my black dress, accepting condolences, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of faces, all of them telling me how lucky I was to have had him, how much he loved me, how devoted he was. If only they knew. If only I had known. 2 weeks after the funeral, Richard's lawyer, Marcus Eldridge, called me. He'd been Richard's attorney for 15 years, handling everything from our wills to business contracts. I'd met him at several dinner parties over the years. He seemed kind, professional, always respectful. He told me it was time for the reading of the will, just a formality really, nothing to worry about. Richard and I had discussed everything years ago. The house would go to me, the savings accounts, the investments. We had no children, so it was simple. Clean. Or so I thought. I arrived at Marcus's office on a gray Thursday afternoon. The sky was heavy with clouds, threatening rain. I remember thinking how appropriate it was, how the weather matched my mood perfectly. I hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's face, that last morning, the way his coffee cup had slipped from his fingers, the sound it made shattering on the kitchen floor. Marcus's secretary led me to the conference room. It was elegant, all dark wood and leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I sat down, clutching my purse, trying to steady my breathing. This was just a formality. Just paperwork. Just the legal end to the life I'd known. Then the door opened again. She walked in, and my heart stopped. Actually stopped. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She was young, maybe early 20s, with long dark hair and pale skin. But it wasn't her youth or her beauty that froze me in place. It was her face. Richard's face. Those same deep-set brown eyes. That same sharp jawline. That same dimple on the left cheek when she offered a nervous, uncertain smile to Marcus. Who was this girl? Why was she here? Why did she look so much like my dead husband? Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. He looked between us, and I saw something in his eyes. Pity. He pitied me. That's when I knew. Before he said a single word, before he opened that leather folder in front of him, I knew that my life was about to change forever. Mrs. Morrison, he began, his voice careful, measured. Thank you for coming. I want to introduce you to Emma Hartley. She's also named in Richard's will. Emma. Even her name sounded delicate, carefully chosen. She sat down across from me, not meeting my eyes. Her hands were shaking slightly. She knew. She knew this would be hard. She knew what was coming. I don't understand, I heard myself say, though my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. Why is she here? Who is she? Marcus opened the folder. Richard left specific instructions. Emma is to receive a trust fund valued at $300,000, to be released to her immediately. She's also to receive a sealed letter that Richard wrote specifically for her. $300,000. To a stranger. To a girl who looked exactly like my husband. Marcus, I said slowly, feeling the room start to spin, who is this girl? He looked down at the papers. Professional distance. Legal obligation. Richard's instructions were clear. Emma Hartley is his biological daughter. The words hit me like a physical blow. Daughter. Richard's daughter. But we didn't have children. We'd tried for years, gone through fertility treatments, suffered through the heartbreak when nothing worked. We'd finally accepted it, just the two of us, building our life together without children. That's what Richard had told me. That's what I believed. But he had a daughter. A daughter who was now 23 years old, which meant she was born before we even got married. How? The word came out as barely a whisper. How is this possible? Emma finally looked up at me, and I saw tears in those brown eyes, Richard's eyes. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. Answer me. My voice rose, sharp and desperate. How long did you know? Did he know? Did Richard know about you? Marcus intervened gently. Mrs. Morrison, perhaps we should continue with the reading, and then you can have time to process everything. Process? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. You want me to process that my husband had a secret daughter for 23 years? That he lied to me every single day of our marriage? Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was just a girl, caught in something that wasn't her fault. But another part of me, the part that was breaking into pieces, wanted to scream at her, to make her disappear, to wake up from this nightmare. Marcus continued reading the will, his voice steady and professional, but I barely heard the words. Assets, accounts, percentages. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was the truth that was slowly crushing me. Richard had lived a double life. He'd had a daughter, supported her, known her, and never once told me. Every business trip, every late night at the office, every time he'd held me and told me I was his everything, it had all been a lie. When Marcus finished, he slid an envelope across the table to Emma. This is the letter Richard left for you. Then he turned to me, and I saw genuine sympathy in his face. Mrs. Morrison, Richard also left a letter for you. Would you like it now, or would you prefer to take it home? I couldn't speak. I just stared at that envelope, my name written in Richard's familiar handwriting. Even from beyond the grave, he was still keeping secrets, still controlling the narrative. I'll take it, I finally managed to say. Emma stood up, clutching her letter. Mrs. Morrison, I know this is terrible. I know you must hate me right now. But if you ever want to talk, if you ever want to know the truth, I'll tell you everything. My number is with Mr. Eldridge. She left quickly, and I was alone with Marcus in that big, cold conference room. The rain had started, beating against the windows, and I felt like I was drowning in it. Did you know? I asked Marcus. All these years, did you know? He hesitated, and that was answer enough. Richard made me promise. Client confidentiality. I'm sorry, Catherine. I truly am. I left that office in a daze. I drove home through the rain, not really seeing the road, not really caring if I made it home at all. When I finally walked through the door of the house Richard and I had shared, it felt different. Foreign. Every photograph on the wall, every piece of furniture we'd chosen together, every memory we'd made, it was all tainted now. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Richard had died, and I opened his letter with trembling hands. My dearest Catherine, it began, and I almost threw it across the room. How dare he call me his dearest anything? How dare he use those words after what he'd done? But I kept reading. I needed to know. I needed to understand. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've met Emma. I can only imagine the pain and confusion you must be feeling right now. There are no words that can adequately express how sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you. You have to believe that. But I also couldn't deny Emma's existence, couldn't abandon her the way I'd been abandoned by my own father. Emma was born before we met. Her mother, Sarah, was someone I dated briefly in college. We were young, foolish, and when Sarah got pregnant, we both panicked. She decided to keep the baby but told me she didn't want anything from me except financial support. I sent money every month, but I never met Emma, never saw her, never even knew what she looked like for the first few years of her life. Then I met you, Catherine. And I fell completely, deeply, irrevocably in love with you. You were everything I'd ever wanted, everything I'd ever dreamed of. I wanted to tell you about Emma. I planned to, so many times. But weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and the lie got bigger and bigger until I couldn't find a way out of it. When Sarah reached out to me 5 years into our marriage, telling me she was sick, that she might not have long to live, everything changed. She asked if I wanted to meet Emma, to be part of her life before it was too late. I said yes. I couldn't say no to my own child, Catherine. I couldn't abandon her when she needed me most. Sarah died when Emma was 13. And from that moment on, I became her father in every way except publicly. I attended her school plays, helped her with homework, taught her to drive, watched her graduate high school and then college. But I did it all in secret, because I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth. I was terrified of losing you, of seeing the disappointment and betrayal in your eyes. I know that what I did was unforgivable. I robbed you of the choice to accept Emma into our lives, to build a relationship with her. I robbed Emma of having a full family, of being acknowledged. And I robbed myself of the chance to live honestly, to integrate all the parts of my life instead of keeping them in separate, isolated compartments. The money I've left to Emma is her inheritance, what any father would leave to his child. It's not enough to make up for the years I kept her hidden, but it's something. I hope that someday, you might find it in your heart to forgive me, to understand that I loved you both, even though I showed it in the most broken, damaging way possible. You deserved so much better than this, Catherine. You deserved honesty, transparency, partnership. You deserved a husband who had the courage to tell you the truth, no matter how hard it was. I failed you. I failed Emma. I failed myself. If there's any mercy in this universe, perhaps you and Emma might find some common ground in your shared pain. Perhaps you might even find something valuable in each other. That's probably too much to hope for, but it's the one thing that might make any of this mean something. I love you, Catherine. I always have. I always will. And I'm so sorry. Richard. I read that letter 3 times, and with each reading, I felt something different. First, there was rage. Pure, white-hot rage that he'd done this to me, that he'd stolen years of truth from me, that he'd made me live a lie. Then came grief, deeper than anything I'd felt at his funeral, because I was grieving not just the man I'd lost, but the marriage I thought I'd had, the life I thought I'd lived. And finally, underneath all of that, there was a terrible, aching emptiness. Because I realized that I'd never really known Richard at all. The man I'd loved, the man I'd built my life with, had been a carefully constructed facade. And now that he was gone, I had no way to confront him, no way to demand answers, no way to scream at him or cry with him or force him to look at the damage he'd caused. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I walked through our house, looking at everything with new eyes. The study where he'd spent so many evenings, supposedly working on client files, had he been writing to Emma? The locked desk drawer I'd never questioned because I trusted him, what secrets had he kept in there? The business trips to Chicago, San Francisco, Boston, how many of those had really been visits to his daughter? I found myself in our bedroom, standing in front of his closet, and before I really knew what I was doing, I was tearing through his clothes, searching pockets, looking for evidence, for proof, for something that would help me understand. And I found it. In a box on the top shelf, hidden behind old sweaters, there was a stack of photographs. Emma as a baby, tiny and red-faced. Emma as a toddler, grinning with missing front teeth. Emma at her elementary school graduation, wearing a ridiculous oversized cap. Emma at prom, beautiful in a blue dress. Emma at college graduation, proud and beaming, with Richard standing next to her, his arm around her shoulders. There were dozens of them, a complete chronicle of a life I'd known nothing about. And in every single one where Richard appeared, he looked genuinely happy. Not the careful, measured happiness I'd seen in our own photos, but something raw and real and utterly devastating to witness. He'd had a whole other life. A whole other love. A whole other family. And I'd been completely, utterly blind to it. I sank onto the bedroom floor, surrounded by photographs of the secret daughter, and I cried until I had no tears left. I cried for the marriage I'd lost, for the trust that had been shattered, for the future I'd imagined that would never exist. But most of all, I cried for myself, for the woman who'd been so naive, so trusting, so willing to believe that love was enough. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't live in this house anymore, surrounded by lies and half-truths. But before I could move forward, I needed answers. Real answers. Not the sanitized version Richard had given me in his letter, but the whole truth, no matter how painful. I called Marcus and got Emma's number. My hands shook as I dialed, and I almost hung up 3 times before she answered. Hello? Her voice was soft, tentative. It's Catherine Morrison, I said, forcing the words out. We need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a cafe on Maple Street, Morrison's Corner. 2 o'clock. There was a pause, and then, yes. Yes, I'll be there. Thank you for calling, Mrs. Morrison. Don't thank me yet, I said, and hung up. I spent the next 24 hours preparing myself. I made lists of questions, then tore them up because they seemed too cold, too formal. How do you ask someone to explain how your entire life was a lie? How do you approach the living proof of your husband's betrayal? But I had to know. I had to understand. Because until I did, I would never be able to move forward. I would be stuck in this nightmare, replaying every moment of my marriage, questioning every smile, every kiss, every whispered, I love you. When I arrived at the cafe the next day, Emma was already there. She sat in the corner, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking small and afraid. When she saw me, she stood up quickly, nervously, like she was preparing to flee. I sat down across from her and studied her face. Richard's face. Every feature was his, softened and feminized, but undeniably his. How had he looked at her all those years and not seen himself? How had he kept this secret locked away, never letting it slip, never showing any sign of the massive deception he was carrying? Thank you for meeting me, Emma said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I need to know everything, I told her bluntly. I need to know how long you knew about me. I need to know what kind of relationship you had with Richard. I need to know if my entire marriage was a joke. She flinched at my tone, but she nodded. I understand. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Start at the beginning, I said. When did you first meet him? Emma took a shaky breath. I was 13. My mom had been sick for a while, and she knew she didn't have much time left. She told me about my father, that he was a good man who'd helped us financially but had another life, a wife, a career. She said his name was Richard Morrison, and that he'd agreed to meet me. 13. She was 13. Which meant Richard had been lying to me for 10 years by that point. 10 years of marriage, of trust, of building what I thought was an honest, open relationship. What was he like? I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know. When you met him. A small smile crossed Emma's face, and it hurt to see it. He was nervous. Really nervous. He brought me flowers, which was sweet but kind of awkward because I was 13 and didn't really care about flowers. But he tried so hard. He asked me about school, about my interests, about what I wanted to be when I grew up. And he listened. Really listened. How often did you see him? At first, just once a month. But after my mom died, it became more frequent. twice a month, sometimes once a week. He'd take me to dinner, help me with homework, teach me things. He came to my school events when he could, though he always sat in the back, always left early. I understood why. He had you. He had his other life. And you were okay with that? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. You were okay being a secret? Emma's eyes filled with tears. No. I wasn't okay with it. It hurt every single day. I wanted him to acknowledge me, to introduce me to you, to let me be part of his real life. But he said it was complicated, that the timing was never right, that he'd tell you eventually. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because he was my father and I loved him. Did he ever talk about me? The question came out before I could stop it, and I hated how desperate I sounded, how much I still needed to know that I'd mattered to him. All the time, Emma said softly. He talked about you constantly. How smart you were, how kind, how you made him laugh. How you'd met at a charity event and he'd known immediately that you were the one. How you'd supported him through starting his business, how you made his house a home. All while he was lying to me every single day, I said flatly. Yes. Emma didn't look away. He was lying to both of us, Mrs. Morrison. He told me he'd tell you about me soon, that he was just waiting for the right time. He told you that you were his whole world, that he had no secrets. We were both living in the lie he created. There was something in her voice, a kind of shared pain, that made me see her differently. She wasn't the enemy. She wasn't the betrayal. She was another victim of Richard's cowardice, another woman he'd loved and lied to. What about the money? I asked. The $300,000. Did you know about that? Emma shook her head. Not until the will reading. I knew he helped with my college tuition, with my rent when I moved out. But I had no idea he'd left me anything. Honestly, I don't even want it. It feels wrong, taking money from you, from the life you built with him. It's yours, I said tiredly. He wanted you to have it. And you're his daughter. You deserve it. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything settling between us. Around us, the cafe buzzed with normal life, people laughing and chatting and living their uncomplicated lives. I envied them. Can I ask you something? Emma said hesitantly. What are you going to do now? I mean, with the house, with everything? I don't know, I admitted. I can't stay in that house. Everything in it is a reminder of the lie. But I don't know where to go, who I even am anymore without him. I understand that, Emma said quietly. When my mom died, I felt lost. And my dad, Richard, he helped me figure out who I was separate from her. Maybe that's what you need to do now. Figure out who Catherine Morrison is when she's not defined by being Richard's wife. It was strange, getting life advice from the secret daughter of my dead husband, but there was wisdom in her words. I had defined myself by my marriage for so long that I'd forgotten who I was before Richard, who I might be without him. Tell me more, I said suddenly. About him. About the things he did with you, the person he was when he was with you. I need to understand all of him, not just the version he showed me. And Emma did. For the next 2 hours, we sat in that cafe, and she told me stories. About how Richard had taught her to ride a bike in secret at a park across town. About how he'd celebrated her birthdays with private dinners, always making sure she felt special. About how he'd helped her through her first heartbreak, offering awkward but genuine advice. About how he'd cried at her college graduation, proud and overwhelmed. With every story, I saw a different side of Richard. Not the calm, collected financial advisor I'd known, but someone more vulnerable, more human. Someone who was capable of deep love but also profound weakness. Someone who'd made a terrible choice and then compounded it year after year because he was too afraid to face the consequences. I also saw myself reflected in Emma's stories. Richard had told her about our anniversary trips, about inside jokes we shared, about quiet moments that I'd treasured. He'd carried both of us in his heart, loving us in separate, compartmentalized ways that never intersected until now. He was going to tell you, Emma said as we prepared to leave. That last week, before he died. He called me and said he couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep living the lie. He said he was going to sit you down and tell you everything, introduce us properly, try to make things right. But then he died, I finished. And left me to discover everything in the worst possible way. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. I'm so sorry for all of this. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw not just Richard's features but her own pain, her own loss, her own struggle to make sense of a situation she'd never asked for. And I made a decision. I'm not ready to be friends, I told her honestly. I'm not ready to pretend that any of this is okay. But I'm also not going to blame you for the choices Richard made. You were a child when this started. You didn't do anything wrong. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. That means more than you know. We exchanged phone numbers, though I wasn't sure when or if I'd use it. As I watched her walk away, I felt something shift inside me. The rage was still there, the betrayal still burned, but there was also something else. A tiny seed of understanding, maybe even forgiveness. Not for Richard, not yet, maybe not ever. But for myself, and for the girl who'd been caught in his web of lies. Over the next few weeks, I began the painful process of dismantling my old life and building something new. I put the house on the market. Every room held too many ghosts, too many questions. I couldn't heal there. I sorted through Richard's belongings, boxing up clothes to donate, finding more hidden mementos of his secret life with Emma. Each discovery was like a fresh wound, but I forced myself to go through everything, to face the truth head-on. I found letters Emma had written to him over the years, sweet and innocent in the early ones, more complex and questioning as she got older. I found receipts for gifts he'd bought her, tickets to events they'd attended together. I found a journal where he'd recorded his thoughts, his guilt, his justifications for maintaining the lie. Reading that journal was excruciating. Richard had known what he was doing was wrong. He'd agonized over it, written pages and pages about his cowardice, his fear, his inability to come clean. But he'd never done anything about it. He'd chosen the easier path, the path of continued deception, even as it ate away at him. One entry, written just a month before he died, stood out. I saw Catherine looking at baby photos today, photos from her sister's family. There was such longing in her eyes. We tried so hard to have children, went through so much pain and disappointment. And all the while, I had a daughter I was hiding from her. How can I be so cruel? How can I claim to love her when I've denied her the truth, denied her the chance to know Emma, denied both of them a relationship? I have to tell her. I have to find the courage. But every time I try, I see the trust in her eyes, and I can't bear to watch it die. I'm a coward. I've always been a coward. And my cowardice has poisoned everything I love. I cried when I read that. Because underneath the betrayal, underneath the lies, there was genuine remorse. Richard had loved me. He'd also been deeply flawed, terribly weak, and ultimately unable to do the right thing. He was neither the saint I'd believed him to be nor the monster I'd painted him as in my darkest moments. He was just a man, complicated and contradictory, capable of great love and great deception in equal measure. About a month after the will reading, Emma called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Morrison? Her voice was uncertain. I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to let you know that I'm donating half of the inheritance to fertility research and support organizations. It feels like the right thing to do, considering everything. I thought you should know. I was silent for a moment, processing this. That's a generous thing to do, Emma. It's what he would have wanted, I think. A way to help other people who are struggling the way you struggled. And honestly, I don't need all that money. My mom taught me to live simply. This way, at least something good can come from all of this pain. Emma, I said slowly, would you like to have coffee again? I think I'm ready to talk more. We met the next day, and this time, the conversation was different. Less tense, more honest. We talked about Richard, but we also talked about ourselves. Emma told me about her job as a teacher, her love of reading, her dreams of traveling. I told her about my work as a nonprofit coordinator, my passion for community service, the plans I was making for my new life. And slowly, carefully, we began to build something. Not a mother-daughter relationship, we both understood that wasn't possible or appropriate. But perhaps a friendship, born from shared loss and shared pain. Two women who'd loved the same complicated man, trying to make sense of what he'd left behind. One afternoon, about 3 months after Richard's death, Emma and I were having lunch when she asked me something I hadn't expected. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive him?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. Some days, I think I can understand why he did what he did, even if I can't excuse it. Other days, I'm so angry I can barely breathe. He stole so much from both of us. Time, trust, truth. Things we can never get back. But? Emma prompted, sensing there was more. But I'm starting to realize that forgiving him isn't really about him anymore. He's gone. Nothing I feel or don't feel will change that. Forgiving him is about freeing myself from the weight of this betrayal. It's about accepting what happened and choosing to move forward anyway. Have you thought about what that looks like? Moving forward? I smiled, and it felt genuine for the first time in months. Actually, yes. I've been thinking about selling the house and traveling. There are so many places I've always wanted to see but never got around to visiting. Maybe it's time to stop living for other people and start living for myself. That sounds amazing, Emma said, her face lighting up. Where would you go first? Italy, I think. Richard always said we'd go someday, but we never did. He was always too busy with work, with clients, with... I paused, the old bitterness rising up before I consciously pushed it down. Well, now I know what he was busy with. But I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not putting my life on hold for anyone else's agenda. Emma reached across the table and took my hand, and I let her. I think that's wonderful, Mrs. Morrison. I think you deserve every bit of happiness you can find. Call me Catherine, I said. I think we're past formalities at this point. Over the following months, Catherine and Emma continued to meet regularly. Their relationship deepened, became something neither of them had expected but both had come to value. Emma introduced Catherine to her friends, included her in birthday celebrations, sent her funny texts and articles she thought Catherine would enjoy. And Catherine found herself looking forward to these interactions, found that Emma's presence in her life wasn't a constant reminder of betrayal but rather a connection to a part of Richard she'd never known, and a friendship that existed independent of him. The house sold quickly, and Catherine used the money to buy a small condo near the water, a place that was entirely hers, with no memories of Richard, no ghosts in the corners. She decorated it with bright colors and new furniture, things that reflected who she was now, not who she'd been as Richard's wife. She also took that trip to Italy, spending 3 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and Venice. She ate amazing food, saw incredible art, and felt truly free for the first time in years. She sent Emma postcards from every city, and Emma sent back enthusiastic responses, living vicariously through Catherine's adventure. When Catherine returned, tanned and relaxed and more herself than she'd been in years, Emma met her at the airport with a welcome home sign and a huge smile. "You look amazing," Emma said, hugging her tight. "Travel suits you." "It really does," Catherine agreed. "I'm already planning my next trip. Maybe Greece, or Spain. Want to come with me?" Emma's eyes widened. "Really? You'd want me to come? Why not? You're young, adventurous, and you mentioned you've always wanted to travel. I could use the company, and honestly, I think it would be good for both of us. A chance to create new memories that aren't weighed down by the past." "I would love that," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Catherine. For everything. For not hating me, for giving me a chance, for being so strong through all of this." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. You don't need to thank me, Emma. If anything, I should thank you. Knowing you, hearing about Richard from your perspective, it helped me see the full picture. It helped me understand that life is complicated, people are complicated, and sometimes there are no villains, just flawed human beings doing their best and failing in spectacular ways. They loaded Catherine's luggage into Emma's car and drove back to Catherine's new condo. As they carried bags up the stairs, laughing about Catherine's overpacked suitcase full of souvenirs, Catherine felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not complete, not perfect, but real. A sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. That evening, they sat on Catherine's balcony, watching the sun set over the water, sipping wine and talking about everything and nothing. And Catherine realized that Richard's death and the revelation of his secret hadn't destroyed her life. It had shattered the life she thought she had, yes, but from those broken pieces, she'd built something new. Something authentic. Something hers. She thought about Richard sometimes, usually late at night when the world was quiet. She thought about the good times they'd shared, the love that had been real even if it had coexisted with lies. She thought about his weaknesses, his failures, his inability to bridge the gap between his two lives. And she thought about forgiveness, that elusive, complicated thing that couldn't be forced or faked. She wasn't there yet, not completely. There were still moments of anger, still flashes of betrayal when she least expected them. But she was getting closer. Because she understood now that holding on to the pain was like drinking poison and expecting Richard to die from it. He was already gone. The only person her bitterness was hurting was herself. Catherine? Emma's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Are you okay? Yeah, Catherine said, and meant it. I really am. For the first time in a long time, I really am okay. Good, Emma said, smiling. Because I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how you'll feel about it. Catherine's heart rate picked up, old anxieties rising. What is it? I've been seeing someone, Emma said, her cheeks flushing. His name is David, and he's wonderful. We've been dating for about 2 months, and it's getting serious. He wants to meet the important people in my life, and well, you're one of those people now. Would you be okay with that? Meeting him? Catherine felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Emma considered her important. Emma wanted to include her in this significant moment. After everything that had happened, after all the pain and betrayal and complicated feelings, Emma was choosing to bring her into her life in a real, meaningful way. I would love to meet him, Catherine said, her voice warm. I'm happy for you, Emma. You deserve all the love and happiness in the world. Emma's smile could have lit up the entire city. Thank you. That means everything.